Hello everybody, this is Sadhna Deshpande from Saraswat International Academy, and we were dealing previously with the first chapter of your English subject. The name of the lesson is The Last Lesson. If you remember, yesterday we have dealt with the part where Franz, who is the hero of our story, who is a small kid, he was first scared to enter to the class, and he was not ready to go to school also. Why? Because he remembered that the teacher told him to remember the rules of the participles, and obviously he had not learned that, he had not studied that, and again on that day he was late to school, and that's why he was scared to go to the school. But anyhow, he started going to school. And at that time, then he realized that the teacher was announcing that it was his last day of the school, and that was the last day of the French language which the teacher was going to teach them. Now let us start reading. Poor man, it was in honor of this last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes, and now I understood why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. Yesterday we have seen that how Franz was surprised, or rather shocked, to see that why the village people, they were sitting on the last benches, and why the teacher was wearing his finest clothes. So now he realized that why that was so. It was because they were sorry too that they had not gone to school more. Now this happens with most of the people when circumstances, they force them to leave their education in between, and then afterwards they realize what they were missing in their life. So when M. Hamel, when he announced that that was the last day of French being taught in the school, so villagers also might have realized that what they had missed, and that's why they were feeling sorry, and that's why they had gone to school to attend the last day. It was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. Probably the people, they realized that the country was no more theirs. Why? Because Germans, they invaded their country. And that's why they were feeling sorry that they had not attended the school, and the teacher, the one who had served the country for 40 years. So it was their way to show their respect for their country and for their master. While I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. It was my turn to recite. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule for the participle all through, very loud and clear, and without one mistake? Now Franz was thinking that he must have tried very hard to learn the rules of participles, or to learn the rules of grammar, but because he was not able to do that, and now he is thinking that when his name is being called by the teacher, then he was just thinking about that how he would say it loud and clear without any mistake. But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there holding on to my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. Now again, this condition occurs to the student anytime, whenever any teacher suddenly asks the question, and if the student doesn't know the answer, and then the student feels very awkward about that, and probably he gets frightened. This is the same thing which is happening to Franz here. He was scared to even look at the teacher also. His heart was beating very fast. He was holding on to his desk. I heard M. Hamel say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. So now again, to the surprise of Franz, the teacher said that I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. So the teacher also realized that Franz was feeling very bad about his own language, about his own country, and that's why the teacher told him that now he is not going to scold him anymore. You must be remembering when Franz entered to the class, at that time also the teacher didn't scold him. And that's what was surprising thing for Franz. Again he got surprised when the teacher said that I won't scold you, little Franz, you must feel bad enough. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, bah, I have plenty of time, I'll learn it tomorrow. Now students, doesn't this thing happen to you? Whenever every day the teachers they tell you that okay, study properly, learn the things which are told to you in the class, but still you overlook that. Why? You think that okay, I have got lots of time and at the end of the session I'll be learning it and I'll be performing nicely in the examination. So this is the same condition because again Franz is also a student like you. And now you see where we have come out. That's the great trouble with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. Now those fellows out there will have the right to say to you, how is it? You pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language? But you are not the worst, poor little Franz. We have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with. Now see, this is what happening most of the times with many of us. We put off the things till the next day and then somebody comes and asks us the questions about the thing, and when we don't give them answers, when we can't answer them properly, at that time they blame us and then they make fun of us. The same thing is happening with Franz. The teacher is telling that if somebody asks you to do something in French or to write something or speak French properly, and then if he would not be able to speak or write properly, then the people will be blaming him. That's what the teacher is telling to Franz. But then again, the teacher is trying to console Franz that okay, you are not the only one with this condition. Many times what happens, most of us, we face these type of problems. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills so as to have a little more money. And I have been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? Now, the teacher is repenting for his own actions also. The teacher is blaming the parents also. Because Franz's parents, they must have preferred to put him to work in some or another farm. And at that time, they might not have realized that what they were missing. Just for the sake of little more money. Sometimes when the parents, they send their children for working, they don't realize that what harm they are doing to their own children. Again, the teacher is saying that, okay, because I have also sent you to water my flowers. Now, sometimes what happens, the teachers, they send the children to go out to do their own work, and that's where the children, they waste their time. That's what M. Hamel, the teacher, is repenting for. So now, the teacher, when he is also realizing his own mistake, then Franz also realized that what is happening to their own studies. Then, from one thing to another, M. Hamel went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it, because when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. Now see, we all know that Language is the means of communication, and if we have got hold on our own language, then that is really to be having the key to the prison of our mind. This prison, what the teacher is talking about, is the prison of our mind. This is what the teacher wanted to tell. Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. Now see, when Franz didn't pay attention to the teacher at that time, he didn't understand anything, he didn't learn also anything, but now because he realized that this is the last day of their French lecture, and then when he paid attention properly to the teacher, then he understood it very well. Students, this is the key to understand anything. Now, one important thing, when you study anything, you need to pay your 100% attention to the topic. There only you can understand it well, and that's what Franz understood when he paid complete attention to the teacher, and he found it easy then. Whether the same thing is not true for all the lessons which you study at school. So now we will move further. All he said seemed so easy, so easy. See, twice so easy he is saying. Franz is saying that it was so easy for him to understand when he paid attention to the topic which the teacher taught. Remember, concentration is the key of learning. Now, let us read again. I think too that I had never listened so carefully and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. Most of the times what happens when the teachers, they become impatient with the students. The teachers, they think that the students, because they don't pay attention properly and that's why they are not able to understand. Probably this might not be true. It may be the case that even though the students, they pay attention, but still they may not be understanding the things. So the teachers must have patience for teaching anything. See, even the teachers, they are also given some advices over here. Now, when the teacher also realizes, and when the student also realize that with patience only these things can happen. The teacher, they can teach properly, and the students, they can study properly when they pay attention, when they are patient enough to do their own work. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away and to put it all into our heads at one stroke. Even though it is not possible for the teacher also, M. Hamel also, to put all the things at once in the student's mind, but still because he realized that now onwards, he was not going to teach the subject, he was not going to be there in the school, and even he was not going to face the students again. So that's why he had also taught the things properly to the students, because he wanted to put it all into their heads, in the students' heads, at one stroke. I know, we know that it is not possible to put all the things in one's head at one stroke. But why the teacher was doing so? Because he was thinking that till now, if he had not done his work properly, or till now, if the students had not studied properly, this is the last opportunity for both of them to do their work properly. And that's why the teacher was teaching properly. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, M. Hamel had new copies for us, written in a beautiful round hand, Franz Alsace, Franz Alsace. So now we know that when teachers, they teach us properly, we also understand the things properly. Let me tell you one thing about Alsace. Alsace is the region of northeastern France, and it's very famous for its wines. So, this is the description of Alsace. It was written beautifully on the board, the name France, the name Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of our desks. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. Now, here, Franz is discussing or describing the scenario of his own classroom over there at that time, because that was the last day. So then they were just there were flags out over there, and everywhere France, Alsace, it was written. The whole room was quiet. The atmosphere was serene. And then the only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. They were writing the name of France, the name Alsace on the paper, and that was the only sound which was coming over there in the classroom. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones, who worked right on tracing their fish hooks as if that was French too. Now see what happens normally in the classroom when some insect comes. So everybody gets distracted, including the teachers also, even though they may not be showing it off, but still, because they are also human beings, so they also get distracted, and the students especially, the littlest one, the smallest ones, they get distracted, and then they just look here and there, they just look at the insect coming in. But at that time when the beetles flew in the class, at that time nobody paid attention to them. Beetles, they are small insects. Then on the roof the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? Now see, this is the most important thing. When Franz, a small kid, when he also started thinking about even the pigeons cooing in German language, okay, just think about the mental status of everybody over there. The little boy, Franz, started thinking, because they were being taught next time onwards German language. So even if the pigeons, they were also made to coo in German, just think about the mental status of the child also. Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Gazing means looking at one thing continuously. Students, yesterday also I told you that whenever you sit with your English lesson, have one pencil or pen and a notebook so that you can just note down the meanings of English words, difficult words. And even if suppose you miss them, I am going to give you the meanings in writing at the end of the lesson. So just now, just pay attention. When Franz looked up from his work, at that time he found that M. Hamel was sitting motionless in his chair, and he was gazing just at one thing and then just at another thing. But he wanted to fix his mind that how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Students, when you will be leaving your school, at that time you will also realize that what next time onwards you will be missing in your life, and then you start paying attention to everything, probably to your classroom, to your benches. You want to keep those memories in your mind. At the same time, you want to fix your mind everywhere. So that's what is happening with M. Hamel. Fancy. For 40 years he had been there in the same place with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him. Now, previously also I have said that some of the things we always take for granted. Our own home, our own classroom, our own school, our own vehicle, everything which belongs to us and which is there for us every time whenever we want it. We take the things for granted, including our parents also. And when we realize that some or another time we are going to lose them, or when we lose some of our possessions, at that time we realize the importance of it. This is the same thing happening with M. Hamel, the teacher, even with Franz also. So that's why he was paying attention to everything. He was gazing at everything. He was gazing at the classroom. He was gazing at the students also. And then he realized that what he was going to miss out. Only the desks and benches had been worn smooth. The walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hop vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. Now, when M. Hamel was having a look at everything, at that time he realized that he had been there since so much time, but still he had not paid attention to those things. Now he is looking at the worn out benches, then he is looking at walnut trees in the garden which were taller, and the hop vine. Now, hop vine is the name of a plant with a web stem, or then in our local language we call it bale. Okay, so he himself had planted that, and now he is looking at that. Why? Because he felt that he is going to miss it out in future. How it must have broken his heart to leave it all, poor man, to hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, for they must leave the country next day. The teacher was thinking about all, and when the teacher was thinking about all these things, what must have undergone in his mind, this is expressed over here. When all these emotions were coming to his mind, at that time also, he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. To listen every lesson to the very last means to understand each and everything. So even the teacher had the courage to understand everything, to teach everything, and the students, they had got to understand each and everything which was taught to them. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the babies chanted their ba, be, bi, bo, bu. These are the syllables of the language. So you must be remembering that when you were in primary section, the teachers, they used to say one thing and you used to repeat it after the teacher. So the same thing was happening in the classroom. The babies, they chanted the syllables after the teacher. Down there at the back of the room, old Hauser had put on his spectacles and, holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. So now see the impact of the last day of the school. In the previous part we have seen that old Hauser had brought his primer and he had kept it on his thighs. So at that time also, when the classes were going on, Hauser also wanted to say the letters along with the children. That's what he was doing. You could see that he too was crying. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. Now, see, when you are full of emotions at that time, mixed feelings come to your mind. And that's what was happening with old Hauser. He was crying with emotions, his voice trembled with emotion. But then, to the small children, it was so funny because they could see that he is saying the things. Old Hauser was saying the things along with them. And that's why the children, they wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Ah, how well I remember it, that last lesson. Now, do you remember the name of our lesson? Even though this is the first lesson of your syllabus of 12th standard, but still, the name of the lesson is the last lesson. How paradoxical it is. Now again, you will think that what is again this paradox? So paradox is a figure of speech where the apparent meaning of the sentence, apparently the sentence seems to be absurd, but after a deep thinking, then the sentence comes to be true. Later on, we will discuss about figures of speech in poetry section. Just now, you just remember that even though the lesson is the first lesson of your syllabus, but still the name of the lesson is the last lesson. Now, all at once, the church clock struck 12. Then the Angelus, at the same moment, the trumpets of the Prussians returning from drill sounded under our windows. Now, in the beginning only, we have discussed about the things happening over there surrounding the school. At that time, we have discussed that the Prussian soldiers, they were doing their drills, they were doing their practice. So, this time, at this moment, they were returning from their drill and sounded under our windows. It means that they had come nearer to the school, and at the very moment, M. Hamel, the teacher, realized that this was the moment where he needed to leave the school. M. Hamel stood up, very pale, in his chair. I never saw him look so tall. Now, here, so tall means so serious. Franz realized when the teacher he stood, he was very serious, and then Franz thought that he had never seen the teacher being so serious. My friends, said he, but something choked him. He could not go on. Now, this is the feeling of M. Hamel. You also know, when you are full of emotion, when you are too sad, at that time your voice chokes. And this is what is happening with the teacher. He could not go on, means he could not continue with his speech. Then he turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and bearing on with all his might, he wrote as large as he could, Vive la France. Now, Vive la France means long live France. It's a French phrase. So when the teacher stood, on the last moment, he took a piece of chalk and then he wrote Vive la France very bravely, as large as he could. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word, he made a gesture to us with his hand. School is dismissed. You may go. Now you can see what was the condition of the teacher. He stopped there, he stood there, he just leaned his head against the wall. Without a word, he made a gesture. Without saying anything, the teacher just made the gesture to the students with his hand, and then, without saying a word, he announced, School is dismissed. You may go. Here we end our chapter. But then you may not go. Why? Because you need to do something else along with reading the lesson by yourself and trying to understand it. Afterwards, what do you need to do? You need to make a fair notebook of English. 200 pages full-scape notebook you prepare for English. Cover up it and label it, and then write down the meanings of difficult words and phrases in your notebook. Afterwards, when you come back to school, I'm going to check it. So don't forget to do all these things. Here we end our lesson, and with this we have ended our first chapter. The name is The Last Lesson.